So under your readings, I grabbed a pretty good qualitative article example. This article is one on how proposal writers work at an engineering firm, and it uses an ethnographic study. I think that the writing in this article is pretty clear, so I think it gives you a good idea of what is pretty typical. You can tell by looking at the abstract that they're using an ethnographic approach, how they triangulated the data through formal and informal interviews. They used a questionnaire, and then they also looked at company documents. So it's a pretty extensive study. I mean, it's 34 pages long. But I think they do a good job of showing why they're taking on this study and like why they chose to use this method. So I think that'll be helpful for you. Let me scooch down. Um, Jumping down to the methodology, um, they talk about how they went to this organization for 8 months, how they define this organization, what this organization sees itself as, and the backgrounds of the people that they were studying and why they chose this organization. So they've just got a lot of detail, but it's not necessarily in the same format as a quantitative method study where they're very clear about, okay, this is our background information in our introduction, then here's our method, here's our results, here's our discussion. The biggest difference between the qualitative and a quantitative article is that the qualitative is going to weave a lot more. They'll probably talk about their methodology, but then they'll keep going back to the earlier background information. So it's not as cut and dry as a quant article, which I'll show you in the next example. But anyway, some of the things I just wanted to show you in this article was that they've got a good justification of why they chose an ethnographic approach because they were looking at this relationship between writing and its social context. That's going to be hard to study using a survey or an experiment. They also said that they had few preconceptions about how engineers write proposals, so they weren't going to be testing any preformed hypotheses. So this is an explanation of why they thought this method was best suited for her needs. They do a good job talking about the limitations of the method that they chose. They talk about how it's good for understanding behavioral patterns, but it doesn't generalize because you're looking at individuals. They also talk about how it's impressionistic. It's what they're taking away from the observation, and what they interpret might be different than what participants interpret. So this box covers validity and how they tried to make that as efficient as possible for a qualitative study. So I thought they did a good explanation here. Working as a team rather than individually, looking at how other people have conducted ethnographies and following their best practices. They just go step by step through their methodology. It's a lot of detail. We're only on page 5, so like by now we're already talking about the methods. So the next 30 pages are going to be all the detail that they found. So just keep that in mind. They're starting to talk about their results. But this is what I meant by qualitative studies. They don't take much planning. I mean, you have to figure out like what method you're going to use and how you're going to get at the participants. But it's going to be in your interpretation of the results, finding the themes, describing all the processes that you observed, and all those things that are going to take a really long time. So they do a lot of talking about, okay, it might seem like the engineers feel this way, but this might be why, or all of their different interpretations. So they just talk about how, maybe if they're watching engineers do one thing, but then when they interviewed them later, the engineers explained what they had been meaning to do. So it's just like a weaving of all of the things that they were doing to collect this information. Okay, that's about all I wanted to show you with this. I've got this article online so you can look at it if you want. Okay?